Good morning and welcome to today's Nassau BOCES Spotlight webinar. I am James Widmer, Deputy Superintendent, and I thank you for joining us this morning. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please enter them in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Meador Pratt, who will be presenting on Regional Information Centers, or RICs. Meador?
Thank you, James. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this presentation on what is a RIC. My name is Meador Pratt, and I am the Executive Manager for Data and Management Services, and I serve as the RIC Director as part of that role. So we'll start with a little overview of the agenda. I'll start off with talking about what is a RIC versus what is a BOCES and the relationship between those two entities. Then we'll talk about the different RICs across the state, the RIC services that we provide here at Nassau, the Nassau RIC's role in statewide leadership, and then we'll save the questions for the end. So at the most basic level, RIC stands for Regional Information Center, the way that I like to present this is thinking about a BOCES, and people have a good concept of what a BOCES is. Think of BOCES as a house, and we'll draw some parallels between BOCES and RICs. So if you think of BOCES as a house, and you think of the first and second floor, the main living area of the house, are the services that BOCES provide to districts, primarily special education, RSIP, meaning our career and technical programs, and curriculum instruction support. So these are the programs and services that the districts, benefit from, that they would not be able to do on their own, the collective service that we offer at BOCES. And then there's the third floor of the BOCES. In order to provide those services, we need support for that. We need people, places, and funds, is the way I like to refer to them. Human resources, facilities, and a business office allow us to deliver those programs and services that are housed on the first and second floor of the BOCES. Then if you think of a RIC as exactly the same thing as a BOCES. It's a house. However, there's a different set of programs and services. So instead of special education, we have technology services, administrative systems, and data services that the RICs provide, and only the RICs can provide. So the RIC is just a house, another house with a different set of programs and services. However, to deliver those services, we have the same needs. We need people, places, and funds in order to deliver those programs and services. So you'll notice that the commonality between the BOCES and the RIC is that third floor, what we have on top. So we don't really need two of those. We can combine them into one, and therefore the analogy that I use is that together the BOCES and RIC are a duplex. So we have different services offered on both sides of the duplex, but we share that same third floor, that same attic space where all the support comes from to provide those services. Now, one thing that's unique to us is that we are a one RIC, one BOCES endeavor, and we're going to get into that in a little more detail. But I'm going to talk about the way this usually works and the way this works throughout the state. You see here that we have one RIC and we have three BOCES. And the RIC provides services to both BOCES and to districts. So let's take this RIC, which would be a RIC upstate perhaps, that has three BOCES that it's serving. So just like our RIC, for example, provides support for Power School to many of our districts, we also provide Power School support to the BOCES so that they can run their programs. And we support our districts directly here in Nassau. But in other RICs, they support other BOCES and other RICs. So the RICs typically support multiple BOCES and the districts that those BOCES supports directly. Now, as I mentioned before, we are a one RIC, one BOCES shop. Why is that? Well, let me give you a little data here to back into why this is the case. Let's take a look at the number of BOCES that are served by each of the 12 RICs across the state. You'll notice that Nassau RIC serves one BOCES. All the other RICs, except for one, Greater Southern Tier, they serve multiple BOCES. Now let's take a look at the number of districts that the RICs serve. You'll see that while we only serve one BOCES, we serve 56 districts, which kind of falls in line with many other RICs across the state and the number of districts that are served. And then, however, when we take a look at the number of students served, we see that Nassau serves the most students, right around 250,000 students that we serve right in Nassau County. And it's very interesting, you know, the way that we operate in Nassau is very different from, you know, what you might experience in upstate. I know that the district that when I came to Nassau 20 years ago, I came from a rural upstate district. That one district was geographically the same size as Nassau County, which has 56 districts. So very different population density here, which is the reason why we are a one RIC, one BOCES shop, because of the vast number of students that we're supporting. So here's a little graphic showing that we have 37 BOCES in the state. 12 of those BOCES are associated with a RIC. So you have 12 duplexes that are kind of spread across the state. And let me tell you a little bit about the different RICs and where they are. All of these RICs I work with regularly, and I'll get to that later. But we have Winnie RIC, the Western New York RIC. We have City RIC. We have NARIC, that's the Northeastern RIC. They go from Albany all the way up to the Canadian border. That's the one that serves the most number of districts, a lot of them very small districts in the Adirondacks. We have the Lower Hudson RIC. We have the Mid-Hudson RIC. We have South Central RIC in the Binghamton area. We have Greater Southern Tier RIC. We have Monroe RIC. We have one RIC called Edutech. That's at the Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES. They have a very different name. We have the Mohawk RIC, also known as MoRIC. We have our neighbors to the east, the Suffolk RIC, and then we have ourselves here in Nassau. And these RICs, which you may not be aware of, these RICs all work together. And together, the work that we do is referred to as RIC 1. So there are a lot of initiatives that are statewide, and we collaborate as RICs to kind of work smarter, not harder, and to take on different pieces and to share our knowledge across the state. It's known as 12 RICs working as one. So that's a great group to work with, and great to have colleagues across the state that we can compare notes with. When I talk about the RICs, sometimes you'll hear about the Big Five, and I just wanted to mention the Big Five because folks like to have awareness of what that refers to. The RICs don't cover the entire state. There are 5 city school districts that basically operate their own RIC-like operation because they're such large school districts. As you can guess, the largest is New York City. Then we have Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, and the one that people wouldn't necessarily bring to mind first when talking about the Big Five is actually Yonkers. So those are the Big Five. They operate outside the RICs, but all other districts across the state operate within one of the 12 RICs. Now let's move to the services that we offer at Nassau RIC. They basically fall into 3 categories: our technology services, administrative services, and data services. And I just want to highlight that these services, only the RICs are allowed to provide these. So if you go to a BOCES that does not have a RIC, they will not be providing any of this support. It is unique to the RICs that can provide these. So first, there's the technology services. So our NOC, the Network Operations Center, all of our networking, cloud systems, our cybersecurity support comes through tech services. We also have NASTech, which I know many of you are familiar with. That is our Association of Technology Directors. That is a RIC service. Our data privacy support service, also a RIC service. Administrative services, your telecommunications, your fiber optics, your project management, procuring, all the different things districts need to buy to support them technologically and administratively. That gets supported by our project managers. Financial systems, administrative systems like IEP Direct, HR applications like ASOP, board management, board docs, Granicus, all those systems that help you run your schools are systems that are RIC supported. Medicaid reimbursement, another big one that we support as a RIC. Then we have our data services. This is the area that I oversee in particular. Our student information systems. We support 4 of these. Most RICs across the state do not support 4. Many of them support 1 or 2. That takes, a lot of dedication to be able to support 4 different systems. It is, sorry about that. A big lift to support 4 systems, but we do it, and we're very proud of our teams that do that work. Our state reporting, our statewide data warehouse, and also our instructional data warehouse, the IDW, which many of you are using frequently. Test scoring services, all your answer sheets get printed here. Your computer-based testing support comes through our data services. And then across all these systems and other ones, are third-party systems, NWEA, Renaissance Star, iReady, data integration across all of these systems so that these systems can, quote unquote, talk to each other and improve the end user experience and allow you all to do the things that you need to do with data. So the next phase of this, when I'm presenting this presentation live, is a little more interactive, and the next slide might shock you a little bit. But if there's one takeaway from this presentation that I want everybody to have, is that being a RIC is a big deal. It's an honor to be a part of the RIC. Nassau RIC is known throughout the state for its leadership in many different areas. And I want to kind of delve more into our RIC services in kind of a fun way. So I've gamified it a bit. So those of you that remember The Price is Right and Bob Barker, what a big deal it was when someone was selected to be on that show and to come down, and Johnny would say, "Come on down." They get all excited and dance coming down the aisles. Well, I've kind of changed that a little bit. If you notice, if I take off the P and the E there, I can change this to The RIC is Right. So I'm going to play a little game here. It's a very easy game. It's called Higher or Lower. And I'm going to throw out a fact about the RIC. The fact is going to be misinformation. It's going to be wrong, but the true answer is either higher or lower. And if anybody is so inclined and would like to unmute themselves and just yell out an answer, that would be welcomed. And if you're not comfortable doing that, that's fine as well. But I'll run through these quickly and see if anybody would care to share. So,
Peter, I'll just
yes.
pause you there. They don't actually have the ability to unpause themselves, but they can, if they raise their hands, I can unmute them to do that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll keep moving along regardless of how it works. So, so the Nassau RIC state reporting and test scoring teams provide service to 150 non-public schools. Do you think that's higher or lower?
Okay. Meador, I say it's lower.
Okay. Well, Kelly, thank you for participating, but Wah, wah. It is higher. It's actually 192. That's one thing when I came here 10 years ago, when I came to the RIC, I could not believe how many non-public schools we support. We support all the Rockville Center Diocese, the Brooklyn Diocese, and several independent schools, the Lutheran Schools Association, a lot of non-public schools we support. Next, Nassau RIC blocked 9,000 phishing emails across Nassau County school districts in the last week. Higher or lower? It's higher. 17,000 phishing emails in a week. Crazy. Nassau RIC has 92% participation of the 56 directors of technology in NASTech. Higher or lower?
Higher.
Yes, you're catching a pattern here. It's actually 100% plus. We actually have one or two districts from Suffolk, and we have the Rockville Center Diocese also participates in NASTech. Great resource. Student Information System team closed 7,500 help desk tickets last year. Higher or lower?
Higher.
Higher, 12,000. A telecommunications team manages 80 G of internet bandwidth for Nassau districts, and it is higher. It's more like 100 G. The Nassau RIC test scoring team processed 156,000 paper-based state assessments in 23-24, and that is higher. It's over 250,000, and that's not counting the 125,000 computer-based tests we also processed. We have the RIC data warehouse with 120 million student data records. Higher or lower? And of course, it's going to be higher. It's actually, we lost track. It's well over 1 billion. So that is kind of a fun way to take a look at the variety and the depth of what we do as a RIC. And even these few slides just kind of scratch the surface. So I'd like to finish up by talking about our role in the state as a leader. Our RIC is very active in a number of different ways. Our state reporting team meets with SED and all of our colleagues across the state once a week. Our test scoring team does the same. Most of that is related to the continued rollout of computer-based testing. I meet twice a month with each of the other RIC directors of the 12 RICs. Meet with them in person one time per month and by Zoom and other. And in our monthly in-person meetings, we also meet with several representatives from the State Education Department. We have a data privacy and security work group that works under RIC 1, and our center is very involved with that group, and we have weekly meetings with regard to data privacy and security with our colleagues there. And then I want to finish on a little note regarding DATAG, which some of you may have heard of. This is where we really shine in our leadership across the state. And full disclosure, I happen to also, as my side gig, unpaid, is I run the DATAG organization. So I want to tell you a little bit about DATAG. DATAG stands for Data Analysis Technical Assistance Group, and it is basically a statewide organization to help assist all of our colleagues across the state with data and how the data is processed, how it's used. Data privacy issues, runs the full gamut of anything related to data. And this is where all the entities that I've been talking about today, the school districts, the BOCES, the RICs, and the State Education Department all come together. This is the 25th year of DATAG. In the background, I have our summer conference program, not intended for you to be reading because it's very small print, but I wanted to put it up there for this graphic so you can see it's a 3-day conference that we have each summer. We also have meetings in the fall and the spring, as well as a virtual conference in January. And the presentations are done by all of these 4 groups. So we have several of our presentations are done by the state education department. Several are done by individual school districts representatives. We have a few done by BOCES, but then we have a whole lot of these presentations are done by RIC staff from across the state. And Nassau RIC in this last summer, out of all those RIC presentations, we did a good share of those. 4 of those were ours. So we're very involved with DayTag. If anybody is interested in learning more about DayTag, I encourage you to reach out to me separately by email. I'd be glad to tell you more about that organization. It's a great support for people that do very unique work and need colleagues to reach out to. So that ends what I have to share with you today with regard to RICs, and I'll open it up now to any questions.
Thank you, Meador. Do we have any questions today? You can put them in the Q&A box below. All right, well, while they're, if anybody's formulating a question, we'll give you a second to formulate it. And we just want to thank Meador for the presentation today. It's fabulous information. And it looks like we don't have any questions. So we're going to thank everyone for joining us. And we will post the video if anybody, Kelly is just thanking you, Meador, and saying she learned a lot that she didn't know. That's
Okay.
fabulous.
Thank you very much.
And we'll post the video. So if anybody wants to share it with a colleague, we'll be sending the link out to districts probably next week. All right.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. Have a great day.